Hey, what's up everyone? I'm glad you could join me on the College Hoops 2K Legacy Mode series today, featuring, you guessed it, Coach Carter. And in the last episode, Season 5 ended in heartbreaking fashion in the NCAA tournament as we came up short at an upset for the ages against Kansas. And Coach Carter, despite the stunning progress he's made at UT Martin, still seeks his first ever March Madness victory in his career. But even though Coach Carter has gone 0 for 2 in his March Madness appearances, that still hasn't stopped the bigger programs from expressing their interest in Ken Carter. And near the end of the episode, I'll show you the two schools that I narrowed down for Coach Carter to choose between. That is if he even wants to move this offseason. And that's the $1,000,000 question right now. Does Coach Carter leave this offseason for a bigger one program? Or will he run it back one more time for a sixth season at Tennessee Martin? Well, we're going to answer that question at the end of the episode, and be sure to vote on what you think he should do once you hear the two options, of course. And here in the 5th off-season video, we're not going to do everything today, but we will recap our rotation from Season 5 and run through the rest of how March Madness went. And lastly, I'll show off the two teams, of course, that Coach Carter is considering a move to. First off, let's cover our player recap, starting with the first of our 3 graduating starters, our point guard, Pierre Hamilton. Hamilton was a former junior college transfer, and he had 3 years of eligibility left when he stepped on the scene at UT Martin. And while he didn't have a superstar, extraordinary career, I still think he delivered in his expectations. A very high IQ player, he delivered. A thorough understanding of tempo and pace, he delivered. A quiet leader for the last 3 seasons, delivered. With the graduation of Dwight Easley, Pierre secured their starting job before this season, his senior year, and finished top 10 in the conference in assists and second in the Skyhawks in steals per game. And with the point guard position subject to change, it leaves a question mark with Jacques Diggs, our top scorer from Season 5. And if you're a regular watcher of this series, you're well acquainted with Pierre and Diggs becoming very close and connecting over and over again for assists. And Pierre Hamilton's role was instrumental as to why Diggs took such a huge step in his junior campaign this season. Just like Hamilton, Diggs stepped into the starting role after sitting behind UT Martin legend Marcus Saunders for 2 straight seasons. I'm sure you guys remember Saunders. And showed us that the hype was real. He reached a career high 30 points twice. And even after moving to the 2-guard position after being recruited as a point man, he still facilitated well, averaging nearly 3 assists an outing. And something Diggs doesn't get nearly enough credit for, his efficiency this season. Despite taking 2 times as many shot attempts as a junior than he did as a sophomore, he still posted career highs in field goal and 3-point percentage, and that's pretty mind-blowing in my opinion. All in all, Jacques Diggs should be considered for whenever Coach Carter makes his decision this offseason whether to leave or stay, because Jacques has just been such an impactful player, and with 3 starters leaving, Coach Carter should consider coaching Diggs for his final season and watching this special young talent graduates. We'll move on to senior number 2 out of 3 that's leaving this season, Luke Lawton. Lawton was a key piece in Coach Carter's first ever recruiting class back in Season 1, and it's been a treat to see his development. The New Zealand native didn't play much as a freshman, was very athletic but also very raw and one-dimensional in offense, but the strides he made were incredible. Lawton developed a jump shot, something I don't think anybody expected him to do, and he ended up shooting 34% from 3-point land in his career, and could be a threat when Diggs took up so much offensive attention. Luke also had a career-high 21 in a win against Eastern Illinois this season. Lawton was always a natural athlete, and his athleticism combined with his strong 6'8" body made for one of the tougher defenders in the conference to get around. Lawton's development was huge for so many reasons, and his departure leaves a hole at the wing spot for Season 6. Lawton was just one of those glue guys that every coach needs in their rotation. I can't believe Blaine Frye is already becoming a senior. It feels like just yesterday this guy got here. We've talked about Luke Lawton becoming one of the better defensive players in the conference, but in my opinion, power forward Blaine Frye has possibly become the best. He rebounds at a sky-high level, posted a career-high 17 boards last season, and averaged 1.5 blocks a night in his career. Frye has been the cornerstone on UT Martin's defense that sometimes looks suffocating. The only negative to Frye is he seems to have maybe reached his ceiling. His stats have been almost identical through his first 3 years as a Skyhawk, and for him to take that next step forward, perhaps he needs to fill out his offensive game beyond the putbacks and short-range baskets. Coach Carter is going to need more front court scoring in Season 6 if he returns, due to the large part of Christopher Fay being the third and final starter who is graduating. Between Hamilton, Lawton, and Fay, that's roughly 28 points and 10 boards a game taken off the board. But enough on the negatives, because Coach Carter won 26 games this season, a new school record, and that would not have been possible if Chris Fay did not make the jump he did this season. We got a little worried after Fay's junior year. It was by far his worst season as a 3-year starter, and he was a liability at times on the defensive side of the floor, often getting caught in foul trouble, and also getting caught in poor positioning in the post. However, Fay worked his tail off to silence the doubt, and even improve on his strengths as well to put together the best season we've ever seen out of a big man under Coach Carter. Chris Fay earned a much bigger slice of the offensive pie this season, taking almost 200 more shot attempts as a senior than a junior, and he starred in the spotlight. Fay was a different animal in the final weeks of his senior campaign, averaging 19 points and 9 rebounds through his final 12 games as a Skyhawk. And the crazy stat of them all, Chris Fay made more field goals in his senior year than he attempted in that forgettable junior year. As we move to the bench, we'll discuss the favorite to replace Fay and join Frye in the front court, soon-to-be junior Teron Gardner. And Gardner has been a solid and sturdy big man through his first 2 seasons, playing the most minutes out of any bench player this season. We talked so much about Gardner's defense this year. He reached a block a game in his sophomore campaign despite only playing 15 minutes a night. But we shouldn't take Teron's offensive game for granted either. Gardner averaged 6 points on 56% shooting in his career, and I'm super excited to see what he can do moving into a starting role next to Blaine Frye. Teron Gardner is just such a mature player on both ends. He plays beyond his years, and this front court looks very scary for opposing big men to deal with. Gardner and Frye, they may be a tag team in protecting the paint next season. Dusty Harrison was one of 2 freshmen who received ample playing time, and he was a little up and down, I'm not gonna lie to you. Harrison did start 3 games when Diggs was hurt near the beginning of the season, and Dusty posted a career-high 15 points in his first appearance in the starting lineup against Murray State, proving that there is potential here. Harrison is a tad one-dimensional though. He made almost half his 3-point attempts, already showing that he can be a deadly spot-up shooter, yet only around 40% of all of his field goals he knocked down. Harrison hasn't proven he can get to the rim much, has below-average foot speed on offense, and still has some basketball maturing to do before receiving a bigger role. We move on to the second first-year player that UT Martin had in the starting lineup for an ample amount of time, junior college transfer Roshan Martin. Martin's first season in Martin, Tennessee, no pun intended, was also a bit turbulent. Despite only standing at 5'8", Roshan proved that he has the athleticism to play at the D1 level, but he still needs refinement. Martin had some struggles with turnovers and shot an underwhelming 32% from the field in his first season on campus. He can be a bit erratic at times with the ball in his hands, but I do think he has a role in the rotation. He posted 6 assists on 2 occasions, and he likes getting his teammates involved. It's just a matter of being better at picking his spots with both his shot and his passes. Redshirt sophomore Evan Stetterman just completed a very exciting end to a sophomore campaign. I'm sure you guys know the story at Stetterman at this point. He came into his freshman year with the expectation that he was a wing that could rebound well for his size and stretch the floor, but his freshman season was hard to watch sometimes. Only 32% from the field and 17% from 3 on 17 attempts. He received the red shirt last season, worked hard, and gave his career a new life as a sophomore in year 5. He was pretty solid this season, but when we got to the Ohio Valley Conference playoffs, Stetterman showed us a different side of him we've never seen before. He had 17 points in the quarterfinals, then 20 more to go along with 8 rebounds in the semis, finishing the postseason averaging 16 points and 5 rebounds off the bench in 3 games. It's a very small sample size, sure, but the ceiling is there for a guy that at one point, we didn't even know if he had a clue if he was going to even have a role on this team. With Lawton's graduation, Stetterman may be the best option at the 3 next season. He can stretch the floor, making 16 of 39 threes this season for a percentage of 41%, and is a very hard worker on the boards. He could be a poor man's Luke Lawton. Next up is fan favorite, the backup 7'2" space eater, Dominique Cleveland, who I have to say it feels like he's been here forever. Cleveland is also a former redshirt just like Stetterman, which is why, despite being in the same recruiting class as Luke, Lawton, and Chris Fay, Cleveland is staying around one more year. He isn't a star, but he knows his strengths and weaknesses and is a very serviceable backup. And finally, answering the question of who will be our new point guard, meet 6'6" junior Darnay Betancourt. I'd understand if you're a bit confused, because Betancourt was a transfer from Oklahoma that joined UT Martin last offseason. And obviously, due to NCAA transfer rules, Betancourt had to sit out a season. But with this talented kid joining the lineup in Season 6, this may be the biggest reason Coach Carter returns for one last dance with the Skyhawks, because we have to watch this kid play. Betancourt is a lanky 6'6" point forward who actually played small forward on Oklahoma, but due to his lack of minutes and struggles, he opted to transfer and has star player written all over him as he transitions to the Ohio Valley Conference. He appeared in over 50 games for the Sooners, so he has the experience, and looking at his skill set, he seems suited for the point guard position. He doesn't specialize in any single offensive skill, but he does do a little bit of everything. He has a decent jumper, has skills to get to the basket, and sees over defenses when setting up guys. He's also a tough defender with an 85 on-ball defense and an 80 steal rating. Putting him at the point also leaves us with a very interchangeable lineup. We can have Darnay start at the 1 or even move him to his native small forward spot, while Diggs plays the point. Dusty Harrison can come in and play the 2s. There's just a lot of mixing and matching Coach Carter can do. And Betancourt looks to become a Sean Livingston or Michael Carter-Williams type player in the future. So the players are finally recapped. Let's move on to the recap of the March Madness festivities. Unfortunately, we got served an early exit by Kansas, but it doesn't mean we can't still have fun with March Madness. So we'll start with the East Regional. We're the number 1 overall seed, the Duke Blue Devils, taking care of business in the first 2 rounds. This is really, the second time that Duke has played North Carolina in a virtual tournament in this series. They've won both matchups, and then they take down the 13th seed Hofstra Pride, one of the Cinderellas in this March Madness season. And then at the bottom of the East Regional, we have Oregon taking care of 6 seed Clemson. So we're going to have 1 Duke versus 7 Clemson to see who will be our first Final Four team, and it will be the Blue Devils by a single point. Pretty impressive run there by the 7th seed Oregon Ducks. Even in the virtual March Madness, you can't sleep on Oregon. So now to the West Regional, where the number 1 seed from our region, the Florida Gators, put up 107 in the first 2 rounds against their first 2 opponents. And if we beat Kansas somehow, we would have taken on the Golden Gophers. But Kansas makes easy work of Minnesota and then Florida. 93 points holding Florida to 75, while Orlando Langford and Lucas Goodwin had 17 and 11 and 24-9 respectively. So some of the players that made the biggest impact whenever they played us, they put in work against Florida as well. So we move down to the bottom of our region, where Ohio State and the A&M Aggies play in the Sweet 16. Texas A&M moves on and then gives Kansas a run for their money, but the Jayhawks pull away at the end. So we got Duke and Kansas in one half of the Final Four. Meanwhile, we look at Memphis, one of our rivals. I might have to schedule them next season. They're back really good again. But they do fall in the Sweet 16 to UCLA, who is still trying to look for their first Final Four of this series. 110 points from the Bruins. They take down Memphis. This is the second time Memphis has been a 1 seed in this series. Some pretty close games there in the first round, though, of the South region. So we're going to move down to the second half of the brackets, as who will face the Bruins to mark our third Final Four participant. Well, we got Virginia, who hangs 102 on Indiana and then falls to St. Louis. So an Atlantic 10 team making the Sweet 16, and then the Elite 8 as they take down Illinois, who played in the Final Four last season of this series. So it'll be St. Louis versus UCLA, and the Billikens take down UCLA. Very impressive. I think the A-10 is a very slept-on basketball conference, so it's nice to see an Atlantic 10 team in the Final Four. So moving down to the Midwest, where we have Texas Tech, the defending champions, as the 1 seed down here, making quick work of the first 3 rounds all the way to the Elite 8. They're cruising. And then we move down to potentially a very good Cinderella team. We got the 11th seed Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. They barely defeat USC, and then make quick work of not only Providence, but the 2-seeded Tennessee Vols. So Georgia Tech versus Texas Tech, the defending champions. Who will be our last Final Four team? It will be, drumroll please, somehow, someway, Georgia Tech gets it done and knocks down Texas Tech by a single point. The second game that Georgia Tech has won by 1 point, and then they also take care of business in the Final Four. Meanwhile, Kansas also delivers a full point loss to Coach K. So in the national championship game, it will be Kansas versus Georgia Tech. We've already recapped Kansas in the game that we played against them, so we'll just focus on Georgia Tech, the 11th seed, who is also missing a starter. The Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets are the talk of the tournament. This is their first Final Four appearance since the early 2000s when Jarrett Jack played there. And if you remember Jarrett Jack, then you deserve a veteran's discount for sure. Despite being without the services of their starting point guard Slade Channing, Tech is trying to complete their historic March Madness run. And if they win tonight against the Jayhawks and the nation's best offense, then Georgia Tech will become the highest seed to ever host a national championship trophy in college basketball history. I might be a little biased since Kansas beat our Skyhawks, but I'm dying to see Tech upset the Kansas Jayhawks. So I'm very excited as always to get into the national championship game. Kansas goes for win number 30 on the season and Bill Self's second national title here at the University of Kansas. Meanwhile, Georgia Tech only around 500 actually in ACC play. They went 8-8 within the conference, 22-12 so far overall. But at the end of the day, you got to throw out all those records and everything leading up to this moment. It's all about how these teams perform in the biggest night of their lives. So the first tip will go to Kansas, and we've talked a little bit about injuries this game, but at the same token, Kansas will have starting big men 7'2" Yemi Diakate in for this ball game. The 7'2" seniors from Senegal, Africa, and he was actually injured in the game that we played against them, but it obviously didn't matter too much in the score sheet, as here we go. He's being trapped in the post. He's going to demand a lot of defensive attention, but great job finding Kai Neal in the adjacent corner. So 2 baskets for Kansas consecutively, and with Kai Neal starting in the backcourt next to Lorenzo Larson, that shows me that Kansas wants to have some more three-point shooting out there. And speaking of three-point shots, there's Vonn Augustine. Augustine is a 6'9" power forward, averaging 12.5 and 7 rebounds on the season, only shooting 32% from 3, but he has proven that he can knock him down and pass a little bit too. Nice backdoor feed to starting 2 guard. That's Kevin Pinson, who only averages 7 points, 42% from 3, a very good 3-and-D player for the Yellow Jackets. So 9-7 game. Kansas back on the attack. We're about 5 minutes into this ball game. Diakate again wants to post up. He still hasn't scored in this game. Missed his first 2 shots, but delivers another bounce pass to a 3-point shooter for Kansas. That is Lorenzo Larson. He's a very savvy 6-foot point guard who had a great game against us. 13 points and 5 assists average for Larson on the season. But surprisingly, Georgia Tech continues to go down low despite the height mismatch inside. That is Daniel Ritter, a 6'8" power forward who averages 10 points and 6 rebounds. He's actually starting at the 3 tonight for the Yellow Jackets. And then look at Xavier Grimes, one of the first guys off the bench, goes with the reverse. 7.5 points average for Grimes off the bench this season. But still down by 5, Kansas has been very explosive from beyond the arc thus far. But again, they go inside. Look at this pass. Lorenzo Larson is tacked for the foul and heading to the line. That is one of the deeper bench guys for the Yellow Jackets. And that 3-point play will be tacked to one of the deeper bench guys on Georgia Tech. This is Hanley Graves, who is a 6'9" upperclassman who subs in for Augustine. No good on the free throw, but between Graves and that is Daniel Ritter again on the glass. Georgia Tech dwindles the lead down to 1, but back up to 4 after a 3-point bomb by Kansas, but continuing to go inside. Oh, finally, Kansas forces a miss inside the paint, and then the nation's top-ranked offense at just a hair under 90 points per game finally gets out on the open floor a little bit. Georgia Tech is full of some pretty good athletes, but there is Nate Dillard, who finally scores in transition. Great assist by Lorenzo Larson, who leads all players tonight in that category. 23-17. Got about 4.5 left to go as stepping outside for a 3-pointer. That is Dalton Shavino, another deep bench guy, and for both sides, they've had their supporting cast play very well. And here's Yemi Diakate, and another double team comes, and he hits nothing but air. The 7'2" African big man is having troubles going up against the Yellow Jackets defensive attack. They were a top 3 defense in the ACC this season. Nice job by Kevin Pinson moving without the ball. The 6'6" sophomore has field goal number 2 on the ball game, cutting the game to a 1-point deficit for the Yellow Jackets. Now Lorenzo Larson, who's had some nice assists, but also a lot of turnovers so far in the first half, throws one to Augustine, and leading the break will be Pinson. He's got 6 points already, along with 2 steals and 2 rebounds. I think arguably the best player on the floor has been Pinson, the 6'6" sophomore. He's played great so far. 27-25, Yellow Jackets with their first lead of the ball game. Going back inside, this is Miles McCormick, who we haven't heard much of today. He's the top scorer on the season for the Jayhawks and one of the better scorers in the entire Big 12 at 19.5 points, 1.5 blocks. That's top 5 in each category in the Big 12. So we saw their missed jump shot by the Jayhawks, and coming up back the other way, that is Jerrell Spalding, a 5'11" senior guard who might not even be playing if it wasn't for the injury to Georgia Tech's main point guard, but he's getting some key minutes down the stretch here in the first half. Makes a big jump shot and then records a huge steal there. Augustine leads the break, and look at the confidence by the 6'9" junior. A little short, but Xavier Grimes again collects a second chance for Georgia Tech. No good, but again he gets his own shot. Pinson to Spalding to Augustine at the end of the half, and he knocks it down. Utter chaos there at the end of the first half for the Yellow Jackets, but it results in a huge run, something nobody expected. 35-27, the Yellow Jackets on top, the 11th seed, trying to become the highest seed to ever host a national championship trophy. If you told me that the nation's best offense would be held to only 43% shooting at the half, well, I would have thought that you were crazy. I mean, this is basically the same game plan that UT Martin tried to put up against Kansas. Georgia Tech playing very slow, methodical, picking their spots to run very, very smoothly and swiftly, and their game plan has been great, especially crashing the offensive glass and going up against that 7'2" monster Yemi Diakate, who forces a stop there on the first play of the second half, has been incredible. I mean, he's 0 for 4 at the half, and he's airballed that shot. But here we go with Lucas Goodwin, the best three-point shooter and most all-around player for the Kansas Jayhawks. He's got 9, and he really had the best game against UT Martin out of any player. He averages 12, shoots 52% from the floor as he picks up a steal here and tries to go back-to-back, and he knocks it down. That is a huge 3-ball there to cut it back to 2. Back-to-back triples for Goodwin, who shoots 52% from the field to go along with his 12 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. He is a beast. But then checking in is the backup point guard who's starting tonight. That is Mitch Fellers, a freshman who is pretty much already a 6-man for Georgia Tech, but without their starting point man. He's the one filling in those duties and delivers a great pass to Pinson, whose magical game continues. Man, the sophomore continues to turn heads with an incredible 3-ball there on the friendly bounce. 12 points for the 6'6" sophomore, and he's not done. Now back-to-back threes for Pinson. 17, and he's the game's leading scorer. 2 for 3 beyond the arc on the night, and here we go again. Pinson wants it at the elbow, but he'll reset it to Jerrell Spalding, who checks back in for the point guard duties. A pretty ambitious shot, no good, but on the glass again. You're really starting to see why Georgia Tech made it this far as an 11th seed. They work super hard. This is one of the hardest working teams across the entire country, and that's really been the biggest reason I can see why they have an 8-point lead now on the nation's best offense and arguably best team with 4 minutes to go. Jerrell Spalding with 3-point number 2, probably the biggest shot in the senior's entire career to extend it to 6. 4 minutes to go. Georgia Tech continues to take their time. Nice pass by Gilbert White out to the perimeter, and another 3-ball drops with a friendly bounce. Mitch Fellers with his second tray ball and 4 attempts. 64-53. Georgia Tech not only beating Kansas, but they are starting to run away with it. Augustine out to Ritter for another tray ball. The lights in the building are being shot out by Georgia Tech, and they ended up running away with the national title game. I cannot believe what I saw tonight. 74-55, Georgia Tech becomes the highest seed to ever win the national championship, and by far the highest seed to win it here in the virtual March Madness or virtual college basketball world here in this series, in the 5 years we've done this series. So, I mean, look at Georgia Tech spreading out the attack. Every bench player that checked in played super well, and they had 4 starters in double figures, and that was all without their starting point guard. And freshman Mitch Fellers played super well, 11 and 5, and I think Kevin Pinson, the underclassman, might have been the best player out there on the floor. 22 points from Lucas Goodwin, but no other starter even eclipsed double figures. And Lorenzo Larson had more turnovers than he did assists, and that's something I don't think we've seen from him all season long. And Yemi Diakate, 2 for 8 shooting. Pretty ugly game for Kansas in the biggest game of their season. So we'll talk about the 2 teams that Coach Carter is considering. First up, we have Loyola Marymount, and I have been saving each season of the series, so I have each season I can go back to look at previous stats and everything. And Loyola Marymount is the first team, a squad with a very rich history, something that I'll definitely talk about in the intro video if we pick Loyola Marymount. I think they are by far the heavy favorites to move to. It's a very interesting environment. They have a very nice court. They got alternate jerseys. They got white, red, and blue jerseys you can choose from, and obviously the aesthetics is very important when you're choosing a new team in one of these games. And if we pick LMU, we'll be without the services of Shaquille Smith, the top scorer, averaging 14. He's a senior, he's graduating, but they got a lot of nice underclassmen and younger guys that I'm really a fan of, including possibly my favorite player on this entire roster moving forward, and that would be 6'3" guard Aaron Henderson. A pass first point, but super athletic and has very good defense, and just seems like he could be a defensive cornerstone at the point guard position. And he was one of the best facilitators in the entire West Coast Conference. And speaking of the West Coast Conference, that would also deliver us a very interesting rivalry and top dog to take down in the future, because if we move to the West Coast Conference, of course we have to take on Gonzaga twice a year. So that would be very interesting moving forward, and trying to rebuild Loyola Marymount to their former glory back in the 80s and 90s when they had some incredible teams. I'll be sure to talk about all that if we pick Loyola, but also keep in mind that just because we don't pick Loyola or our next team coming up, which would be, let's see, who's the second team? It would be the Delaware Blue Hens. Just because we don't pick one of these teams this offseason doesn't mean that they won't be available next offseason. And so let's talk about the Blue Hens. Loyola Marymount, they went 10-19 last season. They have not had a winning season, so they haven't been great, but they haven't been absolutely horrible either. But Delaware, on the other hand, this would be a completely new rebuild if we move to the Colonial Conference. And the Colonial has a couple of very interesting teams to battle. They got programs like Old Dominion, they have Drexel, they have Hofstra, some very sneaky good basketball programs. And overall, this is a very competitive and slept-on conference. And whenever I talk about a full-on rebuild, Delaware would be the team to give it to us, because this team won a whopping 4 games and lost 26 last season. So this would be pretty much hitting the reset button on Coach Carter, despite being in a bigger conference. They have a lot of underclassmen, except for the point guard position. They got 2 points on the roster. That's Zach Ingerson and Jaquil Meredith, but guess what? They're both seniors, so the point guard position is a huge question mark going forward for the Delaware Blue Hens. And overall, this would just be one of those strip it all down and rebuild type scenarios. In my opinion, I would pick Loyola Marymount over Delaware, but I'm curious to see what you guys want, because if you guys want to start completely fresh with a team that only won 4 games last season, then be my guest and vote on Delaware. If you guys want to return a former powerhouse program to their former glory, back how they were one of the better teams in the country back in the 80s and 90s, in a very competitive West Coast Conference where we're going to have to face Gonzaga every year, then choose Loyola Marymount. And honestly, that would be my pick. Honestly, my vote is just to stay one more year. I mean, I want to see Darnay Betancourt play with the Jacques Diggs graduating. overall, I feel like that's the smart move, and I'm dying to get Coach Carter and UT Martin. They're both first ever March Madness wins respectively, so be sure to vote on the comments section. Do you guys want to see Ken Carter give it one last ride here at the University of Tennessee Martin to collect his first and the program's first ever NCAA tournament victory? Or do we pack our bags to the likes of Delaware for a full-on rebuild in a bigger conference, or Loyola Marymount, where we try to restore a former great program to their former glory? Thanks for checking out the channel today, guys. I really appreciate it. And as always, stay tuned. I can't wait to deliver the next video of this series. We'll just be wrapping up the rest of the off season. Stay tuned for that and be sure to vote. Can't wait to see what you guys have to say.